Chronicles, episode number 25. This is the Darkness series, episode number 13 within that series. Today we're going to discuss non-legitimized entities. And what am I talking about there? So, non-legitimized illegal entities or non-state actors within the context of the United States. We're talking about our country. We're talking about malevolency here at our level. That's where I live, so that's what I'm going to focus on. Excuse me. Why do I have this perspective? Why do I focus on darkness so much? If any of you are familiar with the Little Johnny Chronicles, which probably nobody is yet, I was looking at my membership. I think on Instagram I have 4 people, and one of them is one of those fake hoes that likes to become one of your fans. Just one of those bot accounts. So really there's 3 people, one of which is my girlfriend, and another one is some random stranger. And of course they don't give a shit about me. They just need I guess to build their base. Anyway, but the reason I deal in darkness is because, I mean, that's what's presented to me. Since I was a kid, people showed me bad shit. And I'm grateful that I was smart enough to start to decipher that eventually and understand that all those things were bad. And, it didn't happen until I was much older, in my late 20s, that I realized that I need to change my behavior. It wasn't that I knew that it was wrong, and the problem is I didn't have a better way to do things. Like, nobody was showing me anything positive. Even in the Army, right? I joined the Army when I was 17. I had good leaders, but more often than not, and I don't think it's my perception, I think this is what the reality was, is like I was given some bad apples to observe and try to emulate. I was given a lot of good examples too, but my mind at the time, I think, was corrupted to the degree that I was imitating all the bad things that I was observing as I was coming up. And I just got habituated, and it took a long time to break that spell. Even just today, this is the first episode I put out on video since, who knows when. It's been months. Because I was writing, I've been focusing on my writing as opposed to doing the podcast. I did a little card deck. It's called the Demon Series, where I outline several political figures, and I just kind of jot down their misdeeds, violations against the 10 Commandments, the 7 deadly sins, because it's just obvious. It just looks ugly and dirty and dark to me. Of course, I don't walk around without sin, but these are the leaders of our country. These are the examples that our young people are following or have to follow. And that's pretty disappointing, to be honest. But it sticks out like a sore thumb, because that's how I was raised. People will say, well, that's how you were raised. Well, it sure was. I'm not going to deny it. So to be able to call out the dark stuff, the malevolency in society, the way we operate, isn't difficult for me. And so I think what I'm finding is, most of my writing is focused on what might appear to be negative, but what I'm doing is offering a critique of that negativity, and then trying to offer you the ability to identify with that malevolency if you can, not so that you could dig deeper and get darker, but so that you can wake up, so you can come to the realization, like I did in my late 20s, that maybe I should do things better. Maybe my life and my psyche would benefit from putting a positive spin on the way I live my life. Because I'll tell you this, what I found was, once I started doing that, not only did my life improve, but I think more importantly at the time, the lives of other people around me improved. And who was around me? My kids, and at the time my wife. And she's not my ex-wife, but even she was suffering because of my just deplorable behavior. I don't have a better word for it. That's the right word. So what I'm offering you here is just a way to reflect on yourself, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, am I one of the good guys or the bad guys? And do I want to continue to operate on the dark side? Or should I give the light the opportunity to illuminate things inside of me? And in doing so, will that improve the lives of the people around me, right? Do we break the general curses of poverty, gang membership, the prison pipeline, the addiction pipeline, all those things that plague us when we don't have a positive view of the world, and we tend to destroy ourselves and the people around us in the process because nobody's showing us better. We might feel we don't have love, or the multiple ways we have to perceive the darkness. Just to review real quick, and forgive me, I'm not organized. This is why I haven't done this show, because like the writing is easy and this is way harder, and I run into some technical glitches and I'm always discouraged by it. But we're gonna move forward like always, right? You got to put one foot in front of the other regardless of how ugly it looks sometimes. And so what we have discussed to date are starting at the bottom, right? We have what I call the scales of darkness. It's a 3-tier system, tiers 1, 2, and 3, with working from the bottom up, right? So the least malevolent actors are in tier 3. You got the middle ground, which is tier 2, which is where most of us reside. And then you got tier 1 actors who are, the special forces and the Delta Force of bad people, right? Like, of course, I'm not saying Delta Force are bad people. I'm saying these are the antithesis of those things, right? So Delta Force is a positive. These evil fucks are the negative, right? And unfortunately, they're adjacent, because tier 1 actors tend to be legitimized and highly organized, like the government, not the military. I didn't say that, so please don't put words in my mouth. But the government, government systems, religion, corporations, and the list goes on and on and on. And I have a better scaffolding for it that we'll present once we get to tier 1. I presented tier 3 ad nauseum with the Troll series, because that's really what resides in tier 3, right? That's the genesis. That's where we give birth to the dark side of our character. And it evolves from little things, right? We're not born bad. We're taught a lot of this stuff. And so what happens is you start to troll people. You behave like an asshole, and it gives you license to just keep digging, right? You can mistreat people and hurt their feelings. That starts to translate into violating their person, or violating their property, or other different types of crimes. Also in tier 3 are addicts, right? Our addicts are not criminals, nor should they be considered, but it does cause us to act out of character. And from the addiction aspect, we can only escalate our crime, whether it be drunk driving, or, like they say, most violent crime is committed by somebody who's under the influence of some sort, usually alcohol. Alcohol is a big one. But also other substances, right? If you get really hooked on some hardcore drugs like meth, crack, cocaine, all the hard substances that create a particular type of addiction that forces people to prefer to get high as opposed to withdrawal, causes them to start stealing stuff, because, eventually people run out of money, or they're drunk and high and acting out of character and commit a violent crime, maybe a mugging or just assault, right? Like different types of behavior that isn't necessarily normal if we're not drunk. The opportunists, right? People don't think they're gonna get caught, so they just do the crime. And these are all just like gateways of temptation, right? And then finally in tier 3, we have the 7 deadly sins. So like where we fall, we're not an addict or a troll or an opportunist. The 7 deadly sins works as the gateway to evil and self-enslavement, right? If we're working in darkness and our character is leaning that way, that's where we begin. We violate our own, positive traits or potential for positive traits, and adopt bad ones. And those are the things that lead us to crime or addiction, right? You could work down or up. These are all related. So trolls are a subtle gateway. The addict is a first hard gateway to malevolency. The opportunist is an open gateway. It veils itself to us all the time. It's winking temptation, right? Are we going to steal the cookie? Are we going to do it because, we're not going to get caught? And then the 7 deadly sins, the gateway to evil and self-enslavement. Because once we're committed, it makes it easier to continue to trespass, and continue to make that same violation over and over again. And then, of course, as we climb up, you have the first major category in tier 2. It's plain ass criminals. And these folks, like I say, are just plain ass criminals. You have community criminals, just low level, immoral crimes, pimps, prostitution, gambling, pornography, vandals, thieves. You kind of just walk up the ladder from there. Is it vandalism? Is kind of like stealing because it costs somebody money to fix whatever, but it's not the same as stealing the thing outright, which I think is a little bit more egregious, even if it's related. And then you have white collar crime, and of course they're towards the top of the plain ass criminals category because their impact is tremendous. They have access, they take advantage, right? It's related to the opportunist. And then of course the number one grouping under the plain ass criminals are violent criminals, right? And once you start committing violence and acting out in that way, you're starting to approach a different level, and that's where we're at today. So the plain ass criminal category has been completed. We've completed that arc. If you go back and look at the other videos, you can watch, and I try to articulate, and you'll see that we walk the scale, and I have a video on each one of these groupings, and I talk about how each is related, and then the next one is simply more severe. So just to review, we're in tier 2. We just completed in our last episode number 23, the plain ass criminals category. And now, and we've discussed all the different groupings there: violent, white collar, thieves, vandals, immoral, and community criminals. But now we're making the leap to the next higher level in tier 2. The next higher category grouping in tier 2 are non-legitimized entities. And the direct parallel there is, like, I'll just spell it out, is gangs and organized criminals. So this is where we move from the individual level where we're committing violence on our own, or kind of just addicted and stealing stuff, or a robber or a burglar, and we want to, we've honed our craft on the individual level as much as we can, and now we're looking for a team. I think we know how that works. And so you end up in a non-legitimized entity category, excuse me, where your malevolency is amplified because now you're part of a group committing crime as opposed to committing crime on your own. So here's how I broke it down. And it's pretty simple. Most of you guys will recognize what I'm about to lay out. And you can fill in the blanks for yourself. I'm going to discuss it. I have a little outline here. I'll try not to bore anybody to death, but in my opinion, these things are pretty interesting. I think you should look it up on your own. If you belong to these categories, definitely do some soul searching and choose to, say some prayers or whatever, meditate, whatever gangsters do, to try to improve their situation, because it is worth breaking the chains. And I say breaking the chains on purpose because, being in a gang or being part of a cult or being part of these different hierarchies is definitely a type of servitude. You think about it, you got to put your life on the line for the gang. You got to put your life you got to commit to some leader who may or may not have their best interest for you. So, give it some thought. So here we go. I'm going to do it different this time. I'm just going to tell you all the different organizations I have on my list, and then I'll discuss the concepts, and then break down the individual categories and discuss those briefly, and then we'll move on with our day. Okay, so the non-legitimized entities category are gangs primarily. So I broke it down by race. the reason I did that is because it's just easier. And also, if I talk about a Mexican gang, you probably have a direct parallel in the other ethnicities, and vice versa. If I say black gangs, Asian gangs, white gangs, other, right? Like, so you have MS-13, which is considered more El Salvador. Tren de Aragua is considered more Venezuelan. Latin Kings, which is kind of like a mix, the best I could tell. You have biker gangs. People call them white, but they have a lot of different ethnicities within the gang. So, like, they didn't fit neatly in that category. But again, we talk about the racial gangs. They have different corollaries on the street level, on the prison level. And then if you want to talk like about Italians, they have a professional corollary. If you want to talk about white people, you have Russian, or what's the other country? Albanians. There's probably more than that, right? But, I didn't memorize the list of gangs and all their nationalities. So other than those, you have the cults, you have crime rings, which, you have like burglary rings, professional criminals, burglary rings, heisters, bank robbers, things like that, where you have these groups of highly skilled individuals. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 or 4, just depends. And they have career criminals, right? They're a career criminal, mostly work independently, but they're like an independent contractor. They're the guy that the gangs call when they need another person to fill in a particular skill set. Like, I need a professional burglar, I need a guy with a hired gun, I need a driver. We all seen the bank heist where, like, who's the driver? We need a driver, and they go hire one. You watch the movie Heat, that gives a good illustration of that. Career criminals. So let's begin to talk about some of their characteristics. So some of the gangs, in particular, ethnic gangs, they have dual sphere operations. So you have a street level piece and you have a prison piece. And for well-structured, time-honored ones, you have a professional element to it. What I discovered is not all ethnic gangs have a professional branch. So you could talk about the Mexican mafia. You might call that professional. I think they sit somewhere in the middle. They're more of a prison gang as opposed to a professional branch. But you do have the cartels, which, from my point of view, are a professional branch because they bring in billions of dollars. They're out that stratosphere as far as their money making operations are concerned, and their organizational structure. It's like a small government essentially. They cover all the different domains of like transportation, logistics, distribution. More, that's all logistics, but also they probably have administrative stuff, payroll, their own HR departments to settle disputes. Like, maybe they use guns more than they do the pen, but either way, they have all the same elements of a professional organization without actually being professional. However, the reason I label them professional and they're actually in tier 1 is because a lot of the time, the professional organizations are government sanctioned. For example, I would lump the mafia in. They're another tier 1 actor with professionals. Because I would say they maybe are an extension of the government to a degree. What I discovered about white gangs is that they don't have a professional extension, or do they? Right? I kind of look at the government itself as a professional organization, a professional extension of the white criminal gangs, because I don't know if they necessarily have access. I haven't done the homework to make that correlation yet. But I imagine it's related, because if you think of our government structure, how much corruption exists there, it's all legitimized. They're in a different stratosphere. They're in a different level. They steal by the billions. They don't steal by the millions. Their corruption goes beyond just victims on the street. They're victimizing entire populations, where the gangs maybe are victimizing populations, but it's confined. It's within their neighborhood. It's on their street block. It's in that particular prison or the network of prisons, etc. So, all 5 groupings maintain power both inside and outside prison systems. You can even look at the Asian gangs, right? You have the Yakuzas, and you have what are the other ones? The triads. So like even within each ethnicity, Chinese, Japanese, others, I think even the Philippines have their own specific flavor of gang. You can look at all that, and there's plenty of examples. They all have hierarchical command structures. So once you get off of the street level individual and you have organized gangs, they do have a structure. Even the most loosely put together gangs have a leader, like somebody's in charge. There's an alpha, there's the captains, the capos, and then the lieutenants, and then the foot soldiers. I mean, the structure just kind of copies and pastes itself, no matter how far up the structure you go now. But it starts at the street level. Codes of loyalty and retribution. I mean, you violate the gang. We've all heard the term blood in, blood out. The jump in initiation, or the murder initiation, which is just insane. And then codes of loyalty, like don't snitch, right? Keep your mouth shut. What are they called? The snitches get stitches. We don't like rats, etc. Identity is armor. So again, part of our gang affiliations are our race, tattoos. If you ride a motorcycle, you got your gang colors on your vest. I forget what they call them at the moment. The name doesn't come to mind, but they have their patch on their motorcycle vest. They have economic engines. So you have the different ways that they make money to sustain the gang architecture and provide a reason, a mission for their structure, whether it be drug trafficking, extortion, weapons trade, human trafficking, because some of these gangs just deal in a particular niche. If I say human trafficking, you can probably in your mind start to formulate, okay, I've seen this in the news or in movies, and these particular ones are doing the human trafficking. Or you can kind of find a gang that's doing just that in each one of the racial categories. I mean, do the homework. Like it's all there. Extortion protection rackets. We're offering protection. So you hear things about like Tren de Aragua or MS-13, who in their countries say, hey, as long as you pay us a tax, we'll protect you, which really is just extortion. There's no protection racket there. It's like, well, I don't need protection if you just fucking go get a job or some shit. But anyway, moving on. And then initiation and blooding ritual, we've already gone through that. It's all kind of related to their codes. Parasitic relationship with the community. So again, we just kind of talked about it. I'm offering you protection from what? From the other gangs, when really I'm the first threat in your neighborhood. I should probably try to defend you for free if I give a fuck about you, if that's true. So anyway, you see the toxic relationships there. And then lastly, I already mentioned the professional criminal corollary. There may be one, or there might not be. So if you look at the Asian gangs, I can't think of a professional corollary. I know like you might consider the triad or the Yakuzas professional. Are they? I don't know. Maybe I'll cross that bridge when I get there, but I don't think so. Like the Mexican, you got the cartels. The Italians, you got the mafia. The white, supposedly the Jews have the mob. I don't know if that's true. I keep hearing that lately. But anyway, let's move on. Don't want to talk about Mexican gangs and Asian gangs, and I think I've hit those up enough. I think I don't need to leave it to your imagination. You probably just know. You've seen enough movies. You hear about it enough through media about all these different entities and what they're capable of and how they operate. Again, their list of sins or crimes are all related: drug trafficking, extortion, weapons trade, humans trafficking, etc. And the list goes on and on and on. You can see where they exist there. And then lastly, I'll mention the cults, right? It's kind of a similar system, like everybody's unrelated, but they have their own very unique value system, and there's a unique mission as to why we're participating in the cult and why we venerate this particular leader for X, Y, and Z. He or she probably has their different enablers at the second level who are recruiters. What I think Epstein and his pimptress, like usually a guy like an Epstein has a female who's out there recruiting on his behalf, and of course it's not the same as a pimp and his main bitch corollary, because they're kind of a lower level. They're not at this level. I'm talking about maybe Epstein, who had a network, right? He's highly organized. He's bankrolled by somebody, supposedly the foreign intelligence communities, etc. So again, we're still in tier 2, but this is not purely street level stuff. There's a bunch of extra things in here. Again, you can say, well, you just said Mexican street gangs, but they also have their prison corollary. So highly structured, organized. Now they have multi-tiered organizations and nested within each other. So you got the street, you have the prison, and of course, maybe the prison is nested within the cartel or not. I don't know. But because you have different cartels, you have the Sinaloa, you have the what do you call it? I don't want to get into trying to guess all the names because there's so many of them, but they're all loosely coordinated, but they all have their own individual command structures. And the same thing with with the cults. I wouldn't say cults are all necessarily correlated to any degree. I don't think they work together in that way. And then crime rings, professionals, and career criminals. I think I covered that pretty decently. We hear about all the time, so-and-so pulled off the biggest heist, the biggest art heist in history, the biggest bank heist in history. That's not just one guy or one gal. It's a team of professionals that's pulling that off. I would say don't participate. Like, for some people, the juice is worth the squeeze, like they say. Getting caught and going to jail might be part of the credential at that point, right? It's the analogous to getting your associates. I went to state prison. On the outside, maybe that's like getting your associates. I went to federal prison. Maybe that's like finally graduating and getting your bachelor's. I went to solitary for murder. I got 25 to life. Now you got your master's or doctorates even. I don't know. But what I do know is that, life is too short to do it that way. Doing it that way also causes so much misery for everybody else involved. I don't necessarily have a lot of sympathy for the government right now, although I support law enforcement. I think our military is highly patriotic and committed to the Constitution and the mission. Things are pretty convoluted right now. Things are confused, and the positive message is muddled. And I think these worlds are starting to converge. Of course, those things are probably more related to tier 1, not tier 2, where I'm talking about. Even though you do have corrupt individuals that are part of the official system, the official government system, I don't think we're there yet. That's why all these people that I'm talking about today belong in the tier 2 non-legitimized criminals, non-state actors category. And of course, this is just one grouping. I only have one grouping for these folks because we're in tier 2 plain ass criminals. You have a bunch of splintered factions because it's mostly single people doing different shit. You have all these different types of crimes that these individuals are committing on their own. And of course, once you start to coordinate with others, you move up to knowledge. You become a corporation, an LLC, however you want to look at it, in the criminal realm. That's why you move from plain as criminal to non-legitimized entity, and usually that takes form of a gang or organized criminals. And not all cults are criminals. So make sure you're reading between the lines there. Like, I'm speaking vaguely, but I understand that not all cults commit crime. However, when we hear about on the news, usually it's some fucked up shit. 500 people died, Jim Jones, etc., etc. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt and give it some deep thought. If you're a criminal and you want to get out of the life, I highly recommend it. You got kids, you want to go to jail, what's going to happen to your son or your daughter? I think I've shared on here before, kind of the genesis for trying to do better in my life was when I had my first child at 16. I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And what I said is, well, I need a future. I joined the military. And like, here I am. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, but what I am saying is that I can definitely not just see, but I can feel the difference that the way I live my life has impacted my own mind and my own psyche, but also that of my children. And if I ever have grandchildren, then also I will be here to help my children raise their children as well, which is, of course, now we're talking about legacy. We're talking about a bunch of other stuff that is enduring, that is worth its weight in gold, and the value in the time that we put into building something of worth. You understand, right? There's a difference between quality and quantity. Very rarely is quantity by itself worth a lot of value, right? You can have a bunch of a thing, but is that what makes it valuable? It's not always the case. It's usually not the case. It's the quality and the individual thing, and then the collective that follows after it. So you have the opposite of a gang is a good family, right? A strong family structure. I know that we have different family structures these days. Mom's head of household, or used to have broken families or unorthodox families that are not all broken, or grandma's in charge or grandpa's in charge, etc., etc. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. But I guess I'm telling you, if you seek out something good, you can build something so much better, something that's enduring, and something that can't get locked up, or shouldn't, hopefully, can't get locked up, and that you could be proud of in a very different way. You could be proud of your gang membership, and I know people are proud of that stuff. That's cool. What I would encourage you to do is look at the other side of the coin. Try the light for a bit. See if it warms you up, because I'm telling you, people say, well, and I'll just say, that's homo talk, that's gay talk. There's nothing effeminate about it. I served my country for 22 years and trying to live my life right. I think, and I hope, of course, other people can be the judge of that, but I think it made me a decent human being. I think it made me a good man. There's a bunch of definitions implied there, but I think I'm a better product for society, for the people around me, and I hope I can do more good in this condition, as opposed to being locked up or dead even, which is often the result. I'll close it shut there. I hope that you guys are enjoying the Little Johnny Chronicles. I encourage you to take a look at the written post Substack, where I've been focusing most of my time. I need to get on a better iterative cycle with these videos so I can provide you more, finish up the Darkness series, and then move on to more positive content. I have all my professional gear set up. I have my little lab, but I work in IT, but I don't know why some of this fucking shit is technically challenging to me. It's a different domain of IT. None of these platforms talk to each other. I'm working in Markdown versus plain text versus HTML versus whatever. There are different conversion tools, and sometimes it works on my system and sometimes it doesn't. I'm trying to work within ChatGPT if I can give me some instruction and help, but it throws 85 ideas at me at the same time, and it's like, okay, well, now I have to have a conversation with it about, well, what do I do first? And then it gives me a list, and you start to work through it, and then it goes off on a different tangent and breaks all my stuff. So anyway, that's all. Those are all my problems. Those are all first world problems, thank goodness. And we'll continue on. Find your way. find your way, find a positive way. Have a great day and enjoy your weekend.